Should police officers really be on social media? You see cops online everywhere, so they can be, but should they be? What if they want to work undercover one day? Infiltrate a large criminal organization? Won't it ruin their chances? There's certainly no shortage of photos and videos of me online as a police officer in full uniform. So you might think that my thoughts or my opinions are pretty clear on this, but I didn't start using social media until I was like 10 years into my career. And believe it or not, I wouldn't have wanted to use it when I was just starting out. I wouldn't have wanted to be found online at all. I avoided having my photo taken. So in this video, I'm going to give you two main reasons why police officers should avoid having an online presence. I'm going to share real life stories, and I'm going to get into a personal story about what we had to do as kids if we were out with my dad, who was also a police officer. I made videos about it in the past, and in case he was recognized. We actually had an escape plan. If you followed me online at all, you'll know that I have a fairly large digital footprint. I was an early adopter of social media, both in my personal life and my professional life. I've been an early adopter, not just of social media, but technology in general. And I've benefited from that. But believe it or not, I think most police officers should not be on social media, at least not professionally. Private accounts for close family and friends, that's different. I come from a different era in policing. Social media didn't even exist when I got on. There was no such thing as Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, nothing. When I got on, cops took personal privacy very seriously. We didn't even have name tags, and there was a lot of pushback internally when the name tags were mandated. Cops would cover them up and get themselves into trouble, not because they didn't want accountability, but as a safety concern in their personal life, for your family. You didn't want any affiliation with your career at all. Some people had neighbors, and still, this is true to this day, but you could have a neighbor who was a police officer and you never knew. They told people they worked for the city or the county, which isn't a lie. And with cell phones, eventually adopting camera and video recording technology and hardware, and the explosion of social media and citizen journalism, there was no hiding it anymore. The gig was up. Now, I wasn't the first police officer to use social media, but I was a fairly early adopter. And I'd say the first to use it in my own unique way, in my position. But that's true for anybody. We all add our own personality to our pages, unless you're a copycat, and of course, they exist. But when I started, the rules were different. Command didn't even want to see police officers not wearing their hats. There were very, very strict guidelines. And I always push those guidelines. One of the very first times that I actually got in trouble was when I was a school resource officer, and towards the end of the year, some of the students, they knew I was a Star Wars fan, and they gave me a Stormtrooper helmet, like from a cereal box. And I put it on, and I was in uniform. I put it on, I took a photo, and I uploaded it to Facebook. Well, within minutes, I swear, I was getting calls from corporate communications, comms, calling it unprofessional, telling me to take it down, all kinds of different things. And you know what? Listen, my job as a school resource officer at the time was build relationships with a lot of the youth, which I did. And listen, I was able to argue the point that the fact that they gave me a helmet, and these kids, listen, they were in trouble with the police in the past as well. The fact that they trusted we had a relationship, that they gave me a helmet, kind of shows that the program is working. And I thought it was a perfect example of community engagement, of community policing. So anyways, and of course now it's different. You have complete personalities built on hobbies such as that. If there's a cop that lives on your street, pretty much everybody knows it. People's personal social media accounts are not always private, and you have a vision into people's personal lives. You can see what they do for a living, their career. You can even see their family. That would have never happened back in the day. Now, I find personally that the newer police officers are okay with it, but the officers who have been on for quite some time, maybe in the middle or the end of their career, they have a harder time adopting to this new or different mindset. And listen, I don't blame them. It's a genuine concern. And years later, I share those same concerns. I'm off track here, as usual. The question is, has it gone too far? I don't mean the actions of police officers on social media, so whether they're dancing or they're at a community event, taking photos and videos and community games, handing out food. I already made entire videos about that. I'm talking about right from the beginning of the career. Officers' names, their faces, sometimes their entire life story about how and why they wanted to become a police officer, plastered online for all to see. Entire graduation ceremonies are posted online, the videos. Some officers moving through the training program and working in community-focused roles, they're even forced to be online, have their photos taken for promotional material so people can see what the police are doing in their neighborhood or in their community. They have no choice in the matter. There's two main issues I have with this. And if you think I'm wrong, I'm sure you'll let me know. The first has to do with something I mentioned earlier in the video. If you plan on eventually moving into an undercover unit, like real undercover, not just officers dressed in their civilian clothes for a shift, taking an unmarked car. If an officer plans on truly getting involved with a criminal organization, forget about it. It's over. If your face is plastered online, especially in a professional capacity, your chances of transferring to a unit or an organization even where your personal identity has to be kept a secret, it's gone and it will never come back. Even if you think you've done a fairly good job of keeping your identity private, facial recognition technology, it can pick you up. And if you think facial recognition technology laws will protect your identity, good luck. It's only becoming more advanced. It's expanding into other programs. And as time goes on, listen, law enforcement agencies or government institutions in general, I should say, they're usually behind the eight ball in terms of technology. Criminal organizations, they usually are the first to adopt because they don't give a damn about the legalities. So cops are often playing catch up. I made a video in the past about smart glasses and facial recognition technology. I'll link it in the description. I'll put it somewhere. These conversations are being had by organizations, by businesses right around the world in both the public sector and the private sector. When I first started my career, I wouldn't have wanted my face, my identity out there for all to see. I never knew where I wanted to go in terms of my policing career. Your chances of working undercover, again, like the people in all the cool movies, it's finished. I never started using social media until the second half of my career. I knew by then I was more community focused, but I wouldn't have used it or wanted any exposure when I first started. The second reason is personal safety. Not when you're working, not when you're on duty, when you're off duty, spending time with your kids, your family. This might come as a surprise to most of you, but there's a lot of people out there who don't like police officers at all. And they wouldn't hesitate to make a move on an officer when they're off duty, maybe have no protection, no use of force options available to them. When I started this video, I mentioned that as kids, we had explicit instructions when we were out in public with my dad, who was a police officer, especially downtown. There was no such thing as social media, but he worked for the city for many, many years. He arrested a lot of people for a variety of different things. He worked in the ETF for most of his career. So attending a lot of gun calls, high-level search warrants. He arrested a lot of people with influence, if I can say it like that. So naturally, he had to watch his back. And back in those days, and still, depending on what you do, officers were advised to take different routes home even, not to develop too much of a pattern in their personal lives with their behavior, which means we, as kids, we had to learn, we had to adopt. You always hear cops having certain ways about them, like always sitting in certain spots in restaurants. They don't want their back to the door. Well, it's supercharged when spending time with your family. He was always on guard. We could tell as kids. My dad, I mean, he was a fighter, a professional fighter, certainly not one to back down, but we also picked up on his hyper awareness and we went with it, which is why we just didn't go to certain places. That's just the way it was. If you police one area of the city and you've been doing so for quite some time, you're probably not going to go and hang out there in the same area when you're with your family, your young kids on your days off. You've arrested people. Again, not everybody's going to be happy with you. You're not a firefighter. That's a joke. You'd be hyper aware. It's a heck of a way to live. I touched on this in a previous video where I asked a question, should cops have to live where they work? I'm also going to include that at the end or in the description as well. This isn't me being paranoid. This is a reality that police officers face everywhere, and other professions as well, I suppose. A police officer, they might want to go and transfer to another organization at some point. It's not uncommon to use the skills that you learned as a police officer and move to another organization or get recruited. CSIS, CIA, FBI, MI5. You could be limiting your options before you even had a chance to really know where you want to go, before you've had a chance to spread your wings, if I may. So this may sound hypocritical, but it's really not, because the timing was right for me, and I do think that it's gone too far. I ask you if you think it's gone too far. I've given a few examples of why police officers, depending on where they are in their career, might want to think twice about gaining some online popularity or fame. And I'd love to know what you have to say about it. Maybe you want to get into policing, or maybe you're a police officer and you have your own thoughts on this matter. You've been through it. I'd love to hear your opinions. I read every single comment personally, and I respond when it's appropriate to do so. Listen, folks, thank you for watching this video. Be safe out there, look after one another, and perhaps we'll see you again.